But you have to look out for the family. That's what you and Bill know. Sometimes you got to look out for the family.
With all the wild headline news from Minneapolis to Venezuela and Greenland, it's easy to lose track of the most important issue, the biggest threat to America. Now, this is not a video for children, so if you have kids, consider turning this off or choosing a better time to watch it. The people who conspired to overthrow our country have not been prosecuted. There has been no accountability, despite the numerous top national investigations into this grand conspiracy. There is no deterrence to keep the criminals from finishing what they started. In fact, I'm about to demonstrate that they're still doing it. All of the top headline news we see now are just a result of the corruption, a great big sideshow to distract you from the most important issue, the biggest threat. As I'm sitting in front of you with the evidence to indict the person who signed the FISA warrant against Trump, the FBI is continuing to spend millions to catch the perpetrators. Why can't they hear me? It's because they're still doing it. Watch a spy tell me what I can and can't do. This is a video of a spy that's following me and telling me what I can and can't do. His team follows me and threatens me and my family. This is just a taste of FISA abuse. Video 1, please.
No, because then you can't hide. You get nowhere to hide. You don't want to do that.
Does that not deserve an investigation? A spy, a U.S. spy, they've followed me for years. They control who I can reach and what jobs I can get. They can intercept whatever they want. And then come over the CB in my truck and tell me, threaten me with what I can and can't do. That's just a tiny little clip of a whole big long recording. There's multiple recordings that I made of spies trying to manipulate me, threaten me, and influence me. He threatens my family and myself. This is a criminal. This is part of a criminal investigation within the U.S. intelligence telling me what I can and can't do. These are the people who are controlling what you see and what you hear on national media. This is the same thing that Sally Yates was using when she classified Donald Trump as a Russian intelligence agent. FISA abuse. I have all the evidence needed to indict the criminal behind the grand conspiracy, our nation's top and most important investigation. Our representative, Julia Fedorchak, is holding telephone town halls. FISA intercepts telephone calls. She's helping these mobsters control our country. They will be back if we don't hold them accountable. FISA is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Alex Balaz, another candidate for U.S. House, is a foreign intelligence agent. Why aren't these representatives screaming that Ferris Broxton should be recognized and brought forward as the nation's most important eyewitness? Are they clueless to the person that's running to replace them because they're not doing their jobs? Well, I didn't want to run for this office. I certainly didn't want to compete while I'm being censored. But since nobody else is going to guard the House, I'll stand up. I'll do what has to be done to protect our country. I need your help to be heard, to save this country from criminals that use your money to finance the overthrow of your government. Hello, everybody. I am Ferris Broxton. This episode is a summary of Season 1, about a dozen hours of explanation and evidence against the criminals who conspired to overthrow your government. I caught the ringleader. The evidence to indict her is right here. To follow this case, you need to understand that I was investigating a smaller case of organized crime when the kingpin revealed to me that she and her secret organization were planning on taking over the U.S. government by whatever means necessary. She did. She classified Trump as a foreign intelligence agent and swayed an election. FISA was the mechanism they used. It's a very complex and secretive government spy agency tool. This group of spies, judges, FBI, NSA, prosecutors, etc., was a network of secret society masons inside the U.S. government that has promoted their society, brothers and sisters, for generations. That's why the spy agencies are full of Freemasons. Those at the top of the organization control everyone in the society. The Freemasons require oaths of loyalty from the time you step in the door and join their organization. They have disturbing techniques for gaining control over their members before they give them any power. I laid out the history of this secret society throughout the development of our country in early episodes on this podcast series. Summarizing, the FBI was founded by Teddy Roosevelt, a Freemason. The CIA was overseen since its inception by Richard Brevard Russell Jr., a Freemason. The original U.S. Senate building is the Richard Brevard Russell Senate Building, to give you an idea of the influence on our lawmakers by the Freemasons. J. Edgar Hoover was a huge Freemason over the FBI. The long-term headquarters of the FBI is the J. Edgar Hoover Building. President Truman was a huge Freemason who helped these conspiring secret society members stock the spy agencies with their people. Listen to our FBI director, Kash Patel, describe what I'm telling you about a diseased temple. Video 2, please.
The crime fighting has to happen out in the streets in the cities of America and not inside the Hoover building and the headquarters building that built this diseased temple of weaponization.
That's our FBI director saying that the J. Edgar Hoover building is a diseased temple of weaponization. Who built the diseased temple of weaponization? The Masons. In episode 14, I reveal these public figures that put themselves forward as Christians. And they put themselves forward as Christians and God-fearing men. Do we need to start over? Okay. In episode 14, I reveal these public figures that put themselves forward as Christians and God-fearing men. Then I show the documentation of their memberships in shrine temples. Nothing is more antichrist than a sworn allegiance to a brotherhood in a shrine temple. Notice the word temple. The Masons have repeatedly been exposed and no longer use the term temple. Now they use the term lodge. Everybody wants to be a member of the lodge. It sounds like some kind of country club or ski club. It's the same conspiring group. They still have an altar to sell your soul on. Diseased temple is quite an accurate definition of the Masonic lodges, as they call them now. And the original federal building that the FBI headquarters was out of is a diseased temple. That's the problem. This is the same secret Antichrist organization that has multiple branches into multiple different religions. They share the same altar in their lodge. I show an early episode how they operated in the Christian churches. I show in an early episode how they operate in the Christian churches. These are wolves in sheep's clothing. The people that I expose doing that are Sally Quillian Yates' family, okay, her great-grandfathers, etc. Many, not all of them, I'm not accusing every one of them of being a wolf in sheep's clothing, but many of the early Methodist ministers that founded this country were in that secret society, and I exposed them as some of them as mobsters. In order to free our country from the grips of the deep state conspirators, the perpetrators must be prosecuted to the full penalty of law. That will provide a deterrence. Banning anyone who takes an oath of loyalty to a secret society is key to restoring public confidence in our courts and government. As I said, I caught the kingpin who led the attack against our country. She comes from a long line of Freemasons who have protected organized crime for generations. I expose several of those criminal organizations in this series. Prosecuting a criminal is much easier when the jury can see a pattern of behavior. That's why I detail the history of corruption under the Russell, Quillian, and Terrell families. They've done this many times before. Again, I'm not accusing every single person with those names. I name the criminals in these podcasts. The original case I investigate, my case, downloaded onto this website, proves that Sally Yates was running a criminal organization with FISA. At the same time, she attacked Trump in America. And at the same time, she lied to Congress about it. Further, she told me that she would attack Trump if he were elected. This series is a full indictment of the chief suspect, something the FBI and DOJ have not been able to obtain with billions of taxpayer dollars in 10 years to accomplish the task. To be fair, I think Bondi and Patel are trying. I know they have a staff of deep state actors that are working against them. Many people still in the FBI are hiding their true colors. The FBI was comprised of Freemasons when they took office. The fact that you haven't seen me testifying on national news is the evidence that the criminals are still able to control much of what the public sees through high-tech censorship. This episode is going to provide shocking details about how Sally Yates was drugging and raping men while they were unconscious in order to gain control over them. They got young women to cooperate with raping a man so they could blackmail men with statutory rape charges. This is how the secret society has operated for decades. Watch a Nazi propaganda video expose the Freemasons' custom of the day. Video 6, please.
Did an anti-Masonic film based on the Freemason rituals of that era.
Présentez la coupe aux profanes. Prononcez avec moi le serment. Je m'engage sur l'honneur au silence le plus.
The Nazis were disgusting, but we should learn from history. The documentary very clearly states that this video was based on the Freemason rituals of that era. The Freemasons have continued their rituals according to themselves. Very few changes. When they're exposed, they try to hide things. The video shows somebody pouring something into the man's drink, the man who is blindfolded. On the jar, it says feel, F-I-E-L, which means to fall. The idea that they are drugging somebody who doesn't know it as the person is trying to join their organization is completely in line with all the people in modern day who have gotten out of the Freemasons and talked about how you have to commit to something in order to just get into the organization. You're blindfolded to get in the door. You don't know what you're getting into until they gain control over you, until you take oaths of loyalty. The Nazis were disgusting, but we should learn from history. When they sacked France, they set up in the Masonic lodges in France because that's who was controlling the French government. Do we really need someone to explain to us that the Freemasons strive to control governments? We need to educate our children by exposing the Masons in our history books. I expose them in this series. In the Freemasons' own 3-hour recruiting video, they state that after a certain ceremony, the advancing member won't recall much. I don't want to put that clip on here because I don't want to give anybody an excuse for taking this video down. My point is, that's their own claim. This is not something that I am claiming happened to me, that I was drugged and attacked, and that many other people have been drugged and attacked. But rather, I am just pointing out that this has been ongoing with many, many different witnesses throughout history. This is probably what Jeffrey Epstein was up to. That people I caught were making frequent trips to the islands with big society people. After months of investigating the kidnapping of my child in 2009, I realized that nobody else could be behind this other than Sally Yates. She oversaw my case. For that reason, I made both written and public appeals to her and her family members who were over the case to prove beyond any shadow of any doubt that she was the ringleader of this criminal organization. I'm going to play portions of those videos because they seal the indictment of Sally Yates, who took those videos off the internet. Then I'm going to give a summary of my case so the world can see what sort of horrible abuses FISA is capable of, and how they gain control of the people who run your government. This first video is a public plea to the federal judge Alfred Quillian, Sally's uncle. This video was made 16 years ago. Video 3, please.
Your Honor, Alfred Quillian, federal judge for North Georgia. This video series will expose a racketeering organization that I've been a victim of in the Piedmont Circuit of North Georgia. Much of the illegal activity is protected and conducted by magistrate and superior court judges in our circuit, some of whom are your close friends.
This is my public request for Alfred Quillian to open an investigation. Alfred, Sally's uncle and a federal judge, who had been a mafia protector that I expose in episodes 5 through 8. Episode 8, if you just have time to watch one. These videos were made public 16 years ago when the FBI shut down a media investigation that Mike Buffington attempted, which would have proven that Sally Yates was running the most heinous criminal organization imaginable. You should find it alarming that Sally Yates' uncle was a federal judge at the same time she was the top federal prosecutor. Her father was Appeals Court of Georgia, her grandfather Supreme Court of Georgia. Now that's just the beginning of the crime family I exposed in previous episodes. This video here is my appeal to Sally Yates to open an investigation that would have led straight back to her. Video 4, please.
Sally Quillian Yates, federal prosecutor for North Georgia. This video series will expose a racketeering organization that I have been a victim of in the Piedmont Circuit of North Georgia. I have included the evidence and also placed it in the hands of the public. I have been falsely arrested and seriously injured without cause. This is a violation of my constitutional rights that you are responsible for protecting. I have repeatedly had my life threatened and have had a sheriff's deputy try to kill me. Included in these videos are the witnesses who saw some of this abuse. I have been kidnapped, and my child has been kidnapped by a number of illegal actions of corrupt public officials. I've had my property taken against a judge's orders, my money taken by aid of a corrupt judge, and I've had a case fixed against me. I've been attacked and framed in order to cover up the public corruption that is causing much of the violence and murder in your district.
Those are just part of the videos that Sally Yates took off the internet to cover up her crime spree of drugging and raping men, to rob them and make them her puppets, literally slaves that she could use to pillage the national treasury. If our media wasn't spoon-fed by the authorities, they would have reported on this. And like I said, Mike Buffington tried, but the FBI came in and shut him down and took over the investigation. The FBI has never come forward and told us the results of that investigation. That's an indictment against the FBI under Sally Yates, the chief suspect in our nation's biggest and most important investigation. How is the entire country missing this? Every reporter in America should be calling Mike Buffington right now and saying, hey, did the FBI shut down this investigation that you published in your paper? What's the result of the investigation? Now, you just saw two Quillians at the top of Georgia federal government. Her father was an appeals court judge for Georgia. Her grandfather, appeals and Supreme Court judge for Georgia. That's just the beginning of her family connection. Now you have an idea of the structure of corruption that enabled the overthrow of your country for 4 years by a puppet president run by a shadow government. Sally Yates is a direct line descendant of George Washington's mother, Mary Ball. I go through that lineage in this series. If I'm elected, I will destroy that structure and hold the perpetrators accountable. Simply give me the megaphone so Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and Fox News can see the grand conspiracy case is already blown wide open. The representatives we have now are worthless to save our country from its greatest threat. They show no understanding and no care. That's been on our local news here many times, me trying to be heard at Julia Fedorchak's telephone town halls, going to her office, never any response. Now I'm going to get into my case, which was the avenue for me to discover Sally Yates' plans to overthrow our country by a grand conspiracy of the secret society. That's what she told me when I stung her in this case. This is how it started. Now, like I said earlier, this is not unique to me. This happened to many people in Barrow and Jackson County, Georgia. Apparently, it happened to some people on Jeffrey Epstein's island in many places in between also. By the grace of God, I'm just the guy that beat them and is still alive to tell about it. A reporter named Mike Buffington, as I mentioned, owner of Main Street News, began to investigate this publicly before the FBI shut him down and took over his investigation. Again, this is not for children. This is a summary of my case, what they were really trying to do. Taking over the government, gaining control over men with influence and money, ripping off the citizens' bank, absolutely pillaging the national treasury, and destroying families without a second thought. In 2009, my wife at that time awakened me in the middle of the night. I was in our bed, in our house. She wanted me to, fulfill my marital duties. As I lay semi-conscious on my back, I had no idea that I had an IV in my foot. I was clueless that a team of people were in the room controlling my consciousness by what they put into my IV. I was unaware that I had gentle but strong restraints preventing me from getting up and defending myself. When I realized I was restrained, the chemicals were turned up and I was put back to sleep. They did this repeatedly, trying to manipulate the situation to get just one good picture. My wife was talking to me, but another female, her size and shape, was on top of me in the dark. Still, in my compromised state, I grew suspicious. By the time they pulled off a blindfold, I was fighting against the restraints and hollering for help. The flash of a camera was followed by an ether rag over my mouth, knocking me unconscious. The next time I was awakened, my wife was massaging my back, sitting on me, and wanting to talk while I lay face down in our bed. I was able to tell once again that I was restrained. My wife wanted me to meet her mom's friend. I refused. She continued to try to convince me informing me of her motivation, or at least part of her motivation, for getting involved in something that was not quite right. She wouldn't take no for an answer. I tried to get up repeatedly, realizing I was restrained and physically trapped, inhibited by some sort of narcotic flowing through me. I finally agreed to go along, just hoping to save my life and get out of the trap they were holding me in. I simply agreed to meet with her mom's friend. She didn't tell me her mom's friend was Sally Yates. I made numerous short videos documenting this event in more detail. One of them is on my website. I'm sorry, they're not on my website, ferrisbroxton.com. One of them is on, a couple of them are on my Rumble website. So these are short 5 to 8 minute videos each, and you can find them by going to Rumble and typing my name in, Ferris Broxton on Rumble. Videos 7 and 8 from my Rumble website document that attack in more detail. I was drugged with Rohypnol during that attack. Rufinol. Roofies. You probably recognize that. If not, your kids can probably tell you about it, as scary as that is. I had no recollection of that attack the next day. Sometime after that, my wife wanted me to come home early and go to dinner with her mom's friend. I objected, but she insisted that I had agreed to meet with her mom's friend. I couldn't remember that, and I knew that her mom was into some twisted stuff that I didn't want anything to do with. But she kept insisting that I agreed, and they made plans. So we drove to dinner, meeting with Sally Yates, my mom's wife, my mom's sister. This is where Yates proposed a job. She wouldn't define what the job was, but kept saying it was because she owed my mother-in-law a favor, that it could be really profitable. Well, I just kept rejecting her. I wasn't interested in any vague job, no matter how well it paid. And I had been warned that my mother-in-law was into some stuff that wasn't right. Ultimately, Sally Yates gave up and tells my mother-in-law, "Sorry, I can't help you." He doesn't want to do it. To see more, watch video number 5 on Rumble. Not episode 5, but rather the short 5-minute video that's video number 5 on Rumble. I made that a couple years along with the other videos a couple years ago. Now think about this. My wife had attacked me to get blackmail over me before Sally Yates would meet with me and propose a crime. Regardless, I still rejected them. Now think about my wife's situation at that point. She's afraid that I'm going to put the pieces together and begin to recall the attack against me. I'm not going along with the racket that they wanted. She's not only afraid that I'm going to find out she's a closet addict, but that I will recall the attack to gain control over me. Now, I'm going to take a detour from my case and recap the evidence that I've already provided on this website. So, if you haven't watched the previous videos on this website, this is a summary of the organized crime structure that was going on at that time and why Sally Yates owed my mother-in-law a huge favor. At this point in my case, sometime in 2009, I didn't know anything about Barrow and Jackson County. My mother-in-law knew all about the crime that I've exposed in this series. She was the transcript fixer for the criminals. I was new in town. I didn't have a clue. Tim Madison, the DA, was isolated as the scapegoat. He was on his way to prison. I didn't know who he was or anything about it. The racket that they proposed when they attacked me in my bed involved a settlement for wrongful imprisonment. They knew that they could hold someone in jail for an extended time because they had a group of conspirators under Sally Yates' supervision. Something strictly forbidden by federal guidelines. That should be in the legal code, not just the guidelines. This is the racket that I exposed in episode 13 and 14. In other words, their plan was to rip off the taxpayers twice. fraud, waste, and abuse beyond the scope of your imagination. The first time they would pay the sheriff's and DA's crime ring that's destroying families for money, as you saw the attorneys testifying to in episodes 13 and 14. The second time, Sally Yates would make me a slave to get a massive settlement, therefore paying back my mother-in-law for fixing the transcripts. The term grand conspiracy, or fraud, waste, and abuse, doesn't even begin to define the level of wickedness in Sally Yates' crime family. Now, Yates went from the U.S. attorney over North Georgia and the surrounding areas, ranking over the surrounding areas, to running the Civil Rights Division at the U.S. Department of Justice. She knew she was going to be promoted. The Civil Rights Division is where they file lawsuits on behalf of people that were wronged. See, her plan was to be able to represent me or oversee the representation of my case against her home circuit. She would be over all the authorities involved and have all the complaints against all the people involved on both sides of the case. I would have been able to get a massive settlement. Yates is a conscienceless criminal who controls the media and promotes herself while destroying the fabric of our country, spending millions of dollars to run a fraudulent case with the intent to represent the victim, thereby costing the taxpayers millions more. My mother-in-law was the judge's stenographer who had been fixing transcripts for the criminal organization that I exposed in episodes 13 and 14. That was why Sally Yates owed her a favor. I'm going to show you what it looks like on a map, how this was set up. Can we get picture 1, please? This is the map showing how my mother-in-law had backdoor access to the Chief Superior Court judge's house. If you look in the upper right-hand corner, there on Monty Lane is my ex-mother-in-law's house. Okay, this is Sandy Saxton's house. The red circle. In the lower left-hand corner, you see Judge David Mote's house. Now, there's a trail through the woods that leads from her back door to the judge's house. She was his stenographer. That relationship is explained in more detail in previous videos. This is organized crime. Fix any case. Now, the house just to the right of David Mote's house there belonged to a man named Lance Gause. Lance Gause was one of the guys that went through the same case that I went through. Now, I don't know all the details of his, I say the same case, a very similar case. I know that they named him whenever I stung Sally Yates. I know that when I got to Jackson County Jail that he was already there and that they were holding him for years. It's just ridiculous. He had a very, very nice house. Now, yearbooks should prove that Tabitha Saxton, my ex-wife, and Holly Saxton were Pam Dodd Mote's students, the judge's wife. Okay, that's how they formed this relationship. My mother-in-law was the room mother for the judge's wife. Then they got her to become a stenographer for the judge. And then they arranged for this backdoor access. I'm talking about organized crime, controlling any case they want. Massive fraud in the ability to fix any transcript and fix any case any way they want. Notice the name on the road that Judge Motes lives on. It's underlined there in red. That's Old Pendergrass Road. I point that out because of all the corruption I expose in Pendergrass, and also that the local news exposes in Pendergrass, documented in videos 13 and 14. In episodes 13 and 14. This is right down the street from that criminal organization. Okay, this is not something small limited to the city of Pendergrass. This is something that's all over the entire Piedmont Judicial Circuit. Also notice the name of the street across from my mother-in-law's house on Monty Lane, the upper right-hand corner. The name of the street that's underlined there in red is Garner Drive. Garner being the name of the Pendergrass whistleblower that was killed. Holly Saxton, my ex-sister-in-law, bought the house across the street from 433 Monty Lane. They talked about something special behind that house also. These are literally people who are buying houses in order to set up structures of organized crime. Again, I didn't know any of this at that time. I just picked up on the conversation around me. They wouldn't tell me what was going on. I just knew that someone kidnapped my son and tried to frame me. And when I had done absolutely everything in my power to prove that I hadn't done anything wrong, I began to investigate. So we're going to get back to my case and my ex-wife's failed attempt to get me to cooperate. Now, they already attacked me, and they know that I'm likely to remember that at some point. My wife was no doubt unnerved. She needed to create a situation to get me arrested before I recalled the attack. And this is exactly what she did. She convinced me to break something. Not a crime. There's no crime against breaking your own property. In fact, it was already broken. But she made a mess and then called the police and said she was scared. The police refused to arrest me. She was able to call and arrange for a phone call from somebody directing the police to arrest me. I still have the video from my home surveillance showing the police leaving me sitting on my front porch. Okay, they're supposed to, my wife's inside, and I'm sitting on the front porch, and they're supposed to be claiming that they have to protect her from me, remember? Now, the police walk off for like half an hour on this video, just leaving me, obviously, where I can walk in my house if I want to. They claim that they're terrified for her life later, but they talk on the phone for half an hour while they walk around out in my front yard and in the street. And then they come back and they arrest me because they tell me somebody wants you arrested. Somebody called us and told us to arrest you. From there, they continue the domestic violence racket, the fundraising by destroying families program that attorneys told you about in episodes 13 and 14. This was their usual game. They issue an automatic no-contact bond. They tell the man that his wife didn't want him arrested, that she just wanted to apologize. But then they issue a protective order. They're trying to get the man to contact his wife, to be the hero, to rescue his family from these bad cops. It's a trap. They baited me into calling her by having her call me and visit the house while I was away. But I didn't take the bait. They even left a Cinderella slipper at my house as a lure. But I didn't take the bait. Instead, I recorded attorneys and lawmakers telling me what they were really doing. And I showed that in episodes 13 and 14. I tried to file ethics complaints against the judge for taking my son when the attorneys told me they're not allowed to do that. They can't do this. And I was viciously attacked by police attempting to kidnap me, as was documented by several of the witnesses in episode 13. My builder, David Lord, was coming to my house after this first bogus arrest, pretending to be my friend, but putting Rufinol in my beer, and trying to remind me of the commitment I made when I was attacked the first time in my marital bed. He did this several times, like some sort of a secret agent. More than once, he asked me if I ever had sex with a black girl. No. Why do you keep asking me that? Until I finally realized that he had asked me before. I was even saying it back to him. I didn't understand that I had been drugged repeatedly by this man. He was trying to remind me of a commitment I made when I was attacked and drugged and held as a hostage. But I couldn't remember. I just remembered that he had asked me that question before. I told him to leave. But every time he drugged me by putting Rufinol in the beer he brought as a gift, I would forget and fall asleep. When I woke up the next day, I would have little to no recollection of the event. David Lord is a deep state actor whose family goes back to the foundation of Georgia as partners with Sally Yates' family. He is his family is long-term Freemason partners with Sally Yates' family. I exposed this in video number 52 on Rumble. Not episode, but video 52, tying a mobster that drugged me to Sally Yates. This is what Freemasons do to gain control over their members before elevating them to powerful positions. This is what makes that organization so dangerous. People at the top control their members, have complete and total control over their members. Now I'm going to show you a video I made after I was drugged by David Lord. I'll show you the video and then I'll explain it. This is video number 5, please.
This is Tuesday. I woke up about 10 minutes ago by a call from a Bill Garner. I answered the phone and he asked, "Who is this?" I don't know who Bill Garner is. He said he was from. I asked him. He said, "Who is this?" As soon as I answered the phone, I said, "You called my house. Who is this?" He said, "Bill Garner from Winder Housing." I don't know what he's calling me for, but I recognize that name in my investigations with Barrow County. So I don't know. He may have gotten my name somehow with the fire or what, but I thought that was pretty strange, so I thought I would document it.
As you can see, I was asleep in the middle of the day. Now, that video was made 16 years ago. I say that it took me 10 minutes to get the video camera and make a video. I was asleep. Somebody calls me, and I don't know who it is. I make that very clear. I don't know who this guy is. I recognize his name because I've been reading about these investigations in the paper. Now, it's a different Bill Garner, and he's calling me because I called him. But I can't remember calling him. As you see in that video, I'm even saying maybe that's because of the house fire, because he says he's with Winder Housing Authority. Bill Garner was the Pendergrass whistleblower. A different Bill Garner, I'm pretty sure. And that's why I recognize the name. But I literally took me 10 minutes to get up and make that video. I'm asleep in the middle of the day. And then I can't remember calling him. You see how slow I'm moving. But you notice the house fire, or the missing section of my house there. And you notice how confused I am. I'm documenting that Bill Garner called me. Not the same Bill Garner whose name I recognize from my investigation, but that's who I was trying to reach. I just can't remember calling him. That's kind of disturbing. The small part of my house that was burned out is because I set a log from the fireplace outside in the rain while I cleaned the ashes from the fireplace. And then I forgot to return the smoldering log. The easy way to restart the fire. Now, if you've ever maintained a fireplace in the winter, you know that the easy way to restart the fire is to use the log that's smoldering. But I couldn't remember from 1 minute to the next. I was drugged with Rufinol. I'm literally, you can listen to my voice there. I'm not drunk. I'm not sleeping in the middle of the day. This is just a video that I made after I woke up from being drugged with Rufinol. My house literally caught on fire because I forgot to bring a log back inside. And that woke me up the day before. This is during this investigation. This is more evidence that these people were repeatedly drugging me with Rohypnol through David Lord, my builder. I was investigating and working on a defense for my case, intending to expose the criminals at my trial who kidnapped my child. I still thought I was going to have a trial. I clearly wasn't trying to cooperate with them on wrongful imprisonment. There were several news articles in the local paper ranging from corruption in Pendergrass to another investigation by the editor Mike Buffington. I called Bill Garner looking for the Pendergrass whistleblower Bill Garner to learn more about the relationships between the local authorities and my mother-in-law. I was hoping to offer a reward for somebody that could help me put the pieces together. Another newspaper article grabbed my attention. Mike Buffington published that he had multiple unrelated people come to him with similar stories that he normally wouldn't entertain because they were all so wild. But the stories all had three common themes, convincing Mike Buffington that on some level they were true. One of the themes was a rare sports car with an easily identifiable vanity tag. I'm convinced that Sally's Mercedes McLaren, I'm convinced that that was Sally's Mercedes McLaren, which I documented in video number 5. There were in fact 2 cars mentioned by Mike Buffington. My mother-in-law had been showing up at my house in Judge David Mote's car, though I didn't realize whose car it was at that time. She had said, "I bet you wish you know whose car this is." And it stuck out in my head because she had a very similar car that was white. I learned whose car it was from Lance Gause, the neighbor to Judge David Motes. Another financially secure man who was held in Jackson County Jail for years on end without trial. The neighbor of Judge David Motes. Yet another man with money in a very similar case to all these other corruption cases. Another common thread, according to the editor, was a rare health elixir that had suddenly become very popular around town. My wife had been bringing an expensive health elixir home, despite my refusing to pay for it. It was given for free, always as a favor to her mom, or returned merchandise from her mom's friends that sold it. They just kept giving the stuff to us. The elixir was not uniform in consistency nor taste, so it was a good way to administer Rohypnol to somebody who didn't drink much alcohol. The third common theme, according to the Jackson County editor, was the manner of the attack that people were reporting. Now, Mike Buffington didn't say what manner of attack that was in his news story. Mike Buffington, when I went to meet him, I drove to his office. I still couldn't recall the attack, right? I realized the health elixir and the cars were clues that might lead me to learn something about the people in my case. I drove to the Jackson Herald to speak with Buffington. Mike Buffington said the FBI had taken over the investigation and that he couldn't talk to me about it at all. The FBI was controlled by Sally Yates. In other words, the FBI and Sally Yates shut down the investigation that the local reporter was doing, and they've never published any explanation. They've never talked to the eyewitnesses, me, who's here now to tell you about what they were doing, what they are still doing. The world wants to know what was going on with Jeffrey Epstein. These cases are related in more ways than I'm going to talk about today. Here's a terrifying fact. Since then, the state of Georgia passed a law removing the 5-year statute of limitations for statutory rape. Now, statutory rape doesn't have any required intent. You don't have to have any intent to prosecute someone for statutory rape. That's scary. If a man is drugged and unconscious, and they put Viagra in an IV and convince a 16-year-old girl to cooperate, they can own him for life. He doesn't have to do anything wrong. Statutory rape should have a requirement for intent. Let's look at this again. You simply crush up a Viagra pill, put it in a man's margarita along with some Rohypnol. You tell some 16-year-old girl that she can make thousands by simply doing that. Just shake him awake enough for us to get a picture with him with his eyes open. Is this what Jeffrey Epstein was doing? Why are our lawmakers cooperating with the criminals that are trying to gain control over our government? Common sense. We need some representatives that have some common sense, that are willing to stand up and speak about the corruption in our government, to educate our citizens. We need somebody that's got a megaphone. But no, our representatives are going to let our country be overthrown. My mother-in-law was traveling to the islands frequently with her society friends when my case started. There were some other real strong indicators that they were visiting Jeffrey Epstein's island. This is what Sally Yates was doing in the area where I exposed her and her family for running organized crime for generations. Again, you see why it's so important that I laid down that long, tedious history of her family and their conscienceless mafia activities. For you to be able to accept that she was behind this, it's a whole lot easier when you see her criminal history and her family's criminal history. Now, while I'm investigating David Lord, my builder is coming frequently to finish up projects at my house. His responsibilities at my house, which he can't seem to completely wrap up. He's got some other objective, as you now know. The judge, Judge David Modes, sees I'm not cooperating with the racket, but rather investigating, which should lead back to show that my mother-in-law worked for him. He keeps handing the case to a retired judge, T-Pin McWhorter, who I expose as a family member with the Russell Brevard McWhorter and Russell Quillian McWhorter secret society families. Judge McWhorter orders all sorts of weird stuff and requires me to go to counseling before he lets me see my son. All the attorneys tell me that he can't do this. And you've heard the recordings of that on, I think, episode 14. But still, I go to the counseling because it's the fastest route that I know to be able to see my son. My church counselor, Ronnie Brasfield, acts like I need some sort of corrections in my life. But he can't quite identify my problem. After a few sessions, Ronnie changes his tune. There's nothing wrong with you, he tells me at a counseling session. You've caught a couple real big people. Ronnie tells me that I need to think about what I want because I'll be approached by somebody who's asking just that. What do you want? That's how they operate. On the drive home, I'm praying. I'm asking God to show me how to sting Sally Yates. I know she's behind it. Nobody else could control all of these people. I come up with a plan to sting Sally Yates. You can read about that by clicking on the link at ferrisbroxton.com called The Story. It might be in the upper three lines in the right-hand corner, but it's on ferrisbroxton.com. Shortly after I get home, David Lord comes by, does a little work, delivers some of his special beer, and listens to me tell him about my counseling session. Stupid me! I haven't realized that David Lord is a criminal actor that's coming to my house and drugging me. Rohypnol is a very, very wicked drug. The drug that the Freemasons use to gain control over people. It's horrible. I'm telling David Lord about how I'm investigating these people, and he's coming to my house and listening. They have a secret agent inside of my investigation who's drugging me. But I'm still able to gather all of this evidence in the recordings that I play for you. That should give you a real good idea of how obvious and widespread this corruption was. Even with a secret agent knowing what I'm going to do, I was able to gather all that evidence. So David Lord asked me then, what do you want? We're all here. David Lord has a button camera on his shirt and an earbud so that he can be a representative for the people talking in his ear. It's like a video call with David disguising the voices on the other end. I execute the sting after David Lord confirms that Sally Yates is one of the people on the other end. David won't let me sit down because I'll fall asleep. It gets cumbersome. I think I'm just going to do the Mustang Sally sting that I worked out, but they want to work out all kinds of details and so forth. What they want to do to pay me off is the same racket that they were trying to do the first time. Sally Yates wants to pay me off with a massive wrongful imprisonment settlement. Now, I know that I've caught them and that this conversation is being recorded. So I make it very clear that I'm not cooperating, that they're giving me no choice. I tell them that I will not cooperate with any wrongful arrest or imprisonment, and I never do. They ask me questions like, if you were going to go out of the country with a friend to guide you and an FBI agent to handle your case, who would you choose that friend to go with you? Who would you want your friend to be? Instead of choosing my best friend, a big, burly, smart fella, I named my worst enemy at that time. I told Sally that if I was going to travel overseas with an FBI agent, that she would have to be one mighty fine FBI agent, because I certainly wouldn't be cooperating with my ex. I was making sure that when the case came out, that these people would look like first-rate clowns. My case will reveal a couple very attractive special agents, one I dated for a while before I realized what she was up to. While I won countless free international vacations, I never cooperated in staying out of the country or traveling out of the country with anyone. Those adventures will be in Season 2. Skin diving with the sharks. When I woke up the next morning, once again, I had little to no recollection of the conversation with David Lord, where I stung Sally Yates. I had already prepared about 2,000 DVDs that duplicated the evidence I had on my YouTube website at that time. That entire website's been taken down. It was 357 Cletus on YouTube. I was afraid somebody would take those videos off the internet, and they did. The next morning, I drove to Jefferson, as I had planned days before, and I handed out the videos all over town. I put them out in neighborhoods so citizens would see the evidence that I had collected relevant to the local news stories. The FBI wouldn't talk to me, so I was continuing to investigate the kidnapping of my child. The videos you see of me with a full head of hair are taken from those DVDs that have been returned to me now, 16 years later, like the videos you just saw on this podcast. While I was slinging those DVDs around Jefferson, the police grabbed me and accused me of stalking my ex, claiming that I knocked on a door where she was staying. That's all the arresting officer accused me of, despite what the paper said. Even that was a complete fabrication. I never knocked on anyone's door. I was just driving around slinging out DVDs into the yards and tucking them in mailboxes, trying to warn the citizens, like I'm trying to warn you now, that there was a massive, grand conspiracy in their government. From that point on, I was held hostage without bond or without trial for nearly 4 years. Neither Sheriff Judd Smith, Investigator Spaulding, DA Brad Smith, none of them ever went to court against me for the bogus domestic violence charge that the entire case was based on. Without prosecuting that, there's no foundation for the protective order. Without a protective order, you can't have aggravated stalking. They knew this. They simply just grabbed me and threw me in jail and tried to force me into a criminal organization that I repeatedly refused to cooperate with. Now, Sally Yates wants you to pay for her life of crime. I have the right to sue and retire. But unlike your politicians, I want to see justice served. I want to see our country wake up to the biggest threat against us, the Freemasons' grand conspiracy. I didn't accomplish all of this investigation by my own strength and wit. I simply chose to accept the challenge that God put before me and bring it into the light. This is the end of Season 1. Season 2 will focus more on the FISA abuse of spies who surrounded me after I was released from 4 years being held as a hostage in a county jail without bond or without trial, never sentenced, never given a trial. This is when the spies surround me and try to force me into cooperating with them. They intercept my phone calls. They intercept any applications for any jobs. They open one door in the direction they want me to go, where they already have spies set up at a certain company they want me to work for. They will not let me live as a free man. They spend massive amounts of your taxpayer money to try to force me to cooperate with them. Many of these are spies that Sally Yates named when I stung her. These are criminals employed by the U.S. government who have done this before. Sally Yates knew their names and their personalities and told me about them. And I documented them, and I caught those spies, literally recording them, telling who they were, that this is one of the spies that Sally Yates named, and then I continued to record and document everything that person does, all the way to here in North Dakota. These criminals are employed by the U.S. government. Covert actors, FBI, NSA, and secret society criminals who are supposed to protect us, but rather manipulate and censor, controlling what people see and believe, attempting to discredit and frame witnesses, controlling all of my communications. Now, I'll be busy trying to be heard and campaigning, since the opposition won't tell you about me and use their platforms to inform America. I'll be fighting for you and your children and their protection. I'll be fighting to expose the people who are robbing you blind with fraud, waste, and abuse, like the nonsense you see in Minneapolis now. I'll be fighting to expose the people who are lying to you, convincing you that the smaller issues are the more important ones, while they allow the deep state to finish the job of conquering America and silencing the witnesses. Till next time, stay safe and stay informed.